I am Deb Coviello, the Drop-In CEO. And as always, I want to thank you for joining me on another episode where week after week, I bring the most amazing leaders on the show to share their insights with you and hopefully inspire you. And I do this sincerely because I care about partnering with a C-suite leader to navigate challenges with confidence. And this week, I am so grateful to have on the show Ted Santos, who is not your typical business strategist. He's a leadership disruptor who challenges the status quo and trains and develops CEOs, executives, and entrepreneurs to create problems instead of solving them to fuel breakthrough growth. And as the creator of the Disruptive Leadership Model, Ted equips leaders to master chaos, engineer transformation, and scale the impossible without breaking their businesses or themselves. It is my pleasure to welcome you onto the show, Ted.
Wow, that was a great introduction. Thank you. I can only say thank you for one, for having me here, and two, thank you for presenting me in a way that really accurately does describe who I am in the world and the commitments I have to business and people. So,
And for that, I really appreciate this because I think you and I are two both very caring people that we want to help those leaders that are doing just fantastic things, but we just don't want them to struggle. And it is through, I think, some of your thought leadership and also some of your works that we're going to be able to impart some really great knowledge and insights for our audience. So, with that, though, I would love to give you the floor, Ted, to share a little bit about your backstory and the work that you're doing.
sure. So, um, I am a advisor to CEOs. If you and I were in the elevator, I'd say I'm in the business of producing miracles. And CEOs, they hire me when they are looking to create a breakthrough and they are not sure how to do it with existing resources. So I work with them to create disruptive strategies that turn into either disruptive technology and or they allow them to penetrate an untapped market. And I would say most companies have an untapped market, revenue they haven't pursued. But then there's another component where I support them, work with them to transform corporate culture to ensure staff and management do not sabotage that breakthrough initiative because most breakthrough initiatives fail in organizations. They go over time, they go over budget. So that's who I am in the corporate world. So I've spent the past, I think it's 22 years now, specifically advising. Before that, I was a chief operating officer for a transportation company and transforming culture and turning our operations people into a competitive edge. I mean, imagine when your operations give you a competitive edge in the marketplace. I left the country for a number of years and it was on my own dime. I went through jungles and cities and some called me Tarzan. And then I came back and was a chief operating officer for translations of foreign languages. And I knew nothing about that industry. From there, worked for a consulting firm. And then I eventually went out on my own. And I remember working with one particular client that I would say had a me wanting to be increase my value to the client. So at the end of the year, I asked the client, how do I how do I double my value for you going forward? We're in December. So for next year, how do you get double the value from me with the same, sort of resources, same, what we're doing. And he said something important. He said, well, and this was a middle market company. The guy was about 39 years old, Wharton MBA, so smart guy. He said, I don't have time to do something. And if you could go out and every month meet a CEO of a good sized company and interview them, take them to lunch, interview them, and then come back and tell me what you learned from them, that would be really valuable for me. So I did that, and it was valuable. And then that same client said to me he wanted to build a board of directors. So I now had this network of CEOs and other people. So I placed five people on his board, and Two of them were former CEOs of rather significant companies, a bank and uh, actually Ben and Jerry's was the other. And then there was a woman who was like the first woman to become partner in one of the big consulting firms, back in the day. So a very robust board. And I was there. I was there as part of the board meetings, and I saw the value the board provided to my client. So I decided, what if I could make this available to the public? So I created something called the Board of Veteran CEOs. And it wasn't veterans like Army, it was former CEOs. So what I did is I brought together middle market companies. So I invited them to these intimate roundtables, about 10 people at the table, and your revenues had to be between 100 million and $1 billion. And then I invited former CEOs of Fortune 500s to be the sort of leading the discussion. So I've had former CEOs of Chase Bank, Xerox, Dun and Bradstreet, Harris Hotel and Casinos, um, New York Stock Exchange. So so you have these people intimately having conversations, because it's lonely at the top. So who better to speak to if you're between 40 and 60, if you could speak to someone older than you and has run bigger companies and even run companies your size or divisions, and they talk shop. And so what that did is it gave me an enormous amount of access to CEOs in general. And the conversations I've had with some of the former CEOs are just, they're sort of mind-boggling. And I see that there are opportunities. We are leaving money on the table as a nation in corporate America. So I see some possibilities that are available. So I love having conversations like this on podcasts so we can actually talk about what some of these possibilities are, and how CEOs can set their organizations up. So I'm saying all that to say I have had not just exposure to CEOs, I've had these intimate conversations. I've met their wives, I've been to their houses. So I really have great conversations. And sometimes I've spent hours talking about one topic with a guy. And I advise people, I've even advised people who were never a CEO to become a CEO, and coach them to get the job. So there are quite a few things, even post integration of human capital. There are some valuable lessons that I can make available to people, and I'm here that you can ask me even the toughest question, and I look forward to it.
So there's Ted. So thank you for that. There are so many things that are validating about what you do. And I know I'm on a path, a similar path as you, because I have the good fortune of bringing on many CEOs, presidents, and founders onto this program or immediate paths who are also trying to share their knowledge with others. So I know that I am learning a lot. I am seeing their struggles. I drop in and see their struggles
Right.
firsthand. And one of the things you said, and this is also for my listeners out there, is that you can be a CEO. I have this person, and I hope he's listening to this podcast, but he was a senior vice president of several companies. And I kept looking at him and seeing his presence and how he spoke and what he was thinking. And I said, you could be a CEO. And he kept saying, no, 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 no. And the next thing I know, the next time I connect with him, guess what? I'm a CEO of a private equity company. It's like I knew it. I said, yeah, you and my wife told me I could. So sometimes having an external coach, a round table of executives to see the value that you actually present,
Right.
it might be exactly what you need to get over the mindset of, no, I can't. I've never done it before, to a yes, you can. And you're the leader that we need you to be.
Exactly. Well said.
But I want to talk about, let's just get right into it. I mean, producing miracles. I mean, that is a heavy promise, but obviously miracles have happened with your support. So, I mean, what is an example of a miracle happening or the breakthrough that you've been able to help a leader navigate through? What does it mean to have a breakthrough? Talk to me more about that.
Sure. So when I say breakthrough, I think a lot of people first confuse that with a improvement. Like if I can do more, better, or different of this,
Right.
and technically that's the paradigm we're given in the world
Okay.
of business. If I
Okay.
can do this a little better, if I can do more of this, or if I do it differently, It's like if I stack more, better, or different, it's going to be a breakthrough. And really that it just doesn't work that way.
Okay.
A breakthrough is a possibility. It's something that a CEO keeps them up at night. It's the legacy I'd like to leave, except they're telling you it's not the right time. My people are not ready. The economy is not right. There's a list of reasons why it's not the right time, except if I could accomplish this, it would be a breakthrough and it would alter the future of my organization forever. And I, one person that there are lots of great examples in business and non-business, but Steve Jobs and the iPod, put 1,000 songs on a listening device that's small enough that you can fit it in your pocket and you don't even know it's there. How do you put 1,000 songs on one device? We all know what the Walkman is and the Discman,
Right. Yep.
and they play cassettes. So what are you talking about? Well, and so I'm going to bring in two things. That's an example of a leader creating a problem for the organization to solve. So put 1,000 songs on a listening device. We don't know how to do it. There's no blueprint. No one's ever done it. However, when you do it, it's disruptive and it allows you to penetrate untapped markets. You can sell to people who never bought an Apple product. You can even sell to 13-year-olds who can save up allowance to spend $125, but perhaps they could have never bought a desktop or a laptop. It would have been too expensive. But, a little small device. And when the 13-year-old goes off to college, what do they want? They want a, they want a laptop from
Mm.
Apple. So it allowed them to penetrate untapped markets. It disrupted them, but it also creates a culture where people know that they can do things that they've never done. So when he says, now that we have an iPod, turn it into a cell phone. How do we do that? Well, that's the problem for you to solve. So, breakthroughs are these possibilities that ultimately create new revenues. They could be disruptive technology, not necessarily. I have a client that uh, he had a very aggressive strategic growth plan. He wanted to do a roll up in manufacturing. So it was, his industry. There were tons of mom and pops, and when I met him, only bought he had purchased three companies, and it took him 3 years to do that. So, by working with me in 1 year, he bought six companies. And the challenge now that I have six companies, my sales and operations don't want to work together. So I did the post integration of that, and I also onboarded. He's taking one guy who ran a $6 million, a founder who had a $6 million business who is now going to run a $40 million division of a bigger company. So my client was the CEO of the holding company, and
Right.
he had three different divisions within that holding company.
But what was the breakthrough? What was the change that enabled somebody to say, "Whew, I've gotten through three acquisitions in 3 years," to all of a sudden, what didn't hold them back to then acquire three to six more and really, I mean, double, his holdings? What was the miss? Because you missed that piece, and I think that's really important.
Well, one of the challenges that happens is people. So one of the challenges is I have an existing company, and do my are my people able to support me and manage, this kind of growth? Because that could be a quantum leap. We're
True.
doing 40 million, and now we're doing 140 million
It is different.
within a year, right? So we have a different organization. One of the things that I learned, and from a client that said, "Hey, take a CEO to lunch." One of the things was that most people think when you get to 100 million, that's when it's going to make, all these big changes. But each CEO said it's really about 60 million where you
Hmm.
start to need an infrastructure. You start to need structures that look more like a large corporation.
I agree.
Before that, you can get away with that. And they were saying before that, you know everyone, the CEO knows everyone in the company by name. They know
Yeah.
your birthday, they know your spouse, your children, but they said somewhere around 60 million, it starts to change. And somewhere around when you get to like 230 employees, like now you have so much coming at you, you don't even, you have employees and you don't even know who they are anymore. So that's one of the challenges of how do I set up an organizational structure once I do these acquisitions that will support that and not have it fall apart or grow so fast
Yeah.
that it's now out of control and it becomes a bad idea. So that's a mindset shift also. So to transform mindset
I
and
agree.
then looking at your people. So one of the things he had me do to support him was that gentleman, the founder with a $6 million company that was running 40 million, uh, he asked me to coach him also. So which becomes very interesting because my service is almost like trust. So how's this guy going to tell me things knowing that I work with his boss, I advise his boss. So
Yeah.
what can I tell Ted that I don't want the other guy to know? So I had to really establish a relationship where, hey, there are things you can tell me that stay between you and I. And if there are some things it's okay to share. So once that was established, the interesting thing was he said, wow, um, I had my own agenda when I allowed myself to be acquired. Now I better understand. So I was part of onboarding him and getting him aligned with the holding company,
Hmm.
with the CEO of the holding company. And just as a side, I've seen this challenge in many other companies. When you acquire a company, one of the things you hear is, I just bought this company and these people are just giving me lip service. They're just like, yeah, yeah, we'll
Oh,
go along with it. So
I could go there.
um, that's that's what this guy was telling me. He was just giving lip service, except by working with me, he now saw that, okay, I'm going to align with this, no longer lip service. I'm taking on a different commitment. And so that made it easier for him to run that, much larger division. I mean, he had his people that he had pulled out, that he brought from his original
Right, right.
company. Um, but being able to run a larger organization is very different. 40 million is very different from a $6 million company where your son is going to be the successor, and
Yeah.
everyone's you haven't sort of close knit, like family. Everyone's like your family in the company. And
Yeah.
now you're 40 million and there are people you don't even know. So you have to develop entirely new relationships and set up structures that support that company. So,
I totally resonates with me because I actually interviewed somebody that, again, somewhat of a family owned business. It was, given to him, and I asked him what keeps him up at night. And I says, what really bothers me is that I used to know everybody's birthday and I know something about what made
right,
them special. And when we get so big that I can't have that connectivity, that's the true challenge to at least maintain the culture. And while to your point, I agree, I've had to help companies put in systems to enable to build confidence for customers, but to
right,
also grow. In the end, it does help them, but they don't realize it. And helping them to realize that you can still preserve some of the past of what worked well and that deep culture, and then kind of enrich it or evolve it within the systems that maintain the legacy of it all. So, again,
right.
approaching people to change a mindset is not like you're leaving anything behind or losing your pride of who you are, but what can we do to build on what was already great and make it even greater? So, noble work that you do. I want to ask you a question because I think it's a pain point or something I want to highlight. When you talked about you believe that potentially CEOs are leaving money on the table, um, for whatever reason, what they do or what they don't do. Could you maybe extrapolate a little bit by if they don't do certain changes or mindsets or how they lead their organizations, they are going to leave money on the table? Because that piqued my interest. And so for anybody listening out there, ooh, like how can I get some more money to the bottom line? I think they would be interested. So what's an example? What did you mean by leaving money on the table?
So I've been thinking about this for a long time, and
Okay.
the way I expressed it was we look at employees as being an expense
Yeah,
on the balance sheet, and I said that's inappropriate
I agree.
um, because people have greater capacity. So the example I would say, you know, if you bought a property, you bought 20 acres with a building on it, and you wanted to increase that asset's value, there are things that you can do to increase the value of that asset, to the property, to the building. There, you know, we all understand that. We don't understand how to do that for human capital. We only know how to do that for assets. So uh, I said there's a way that you can have employees be an asset on the balance sheet instead of an expense. And I've had a CFO, this was a friend, he said, that's just numerically, mathematically impossible. You can't do it. So I called out of my stable of CEOs, of former CEO, Fortune 500s, Bob Weissman, former CEO of Dun& and Bradstreet. One day I called and said, Bob, need to have a conversation with you. I think there's a problem in corporate America, and you're a smart guy, and you're going to come up with an answer, and I need you to not do that. I need you to think about this problem before you give me an immediate knee-jerk answer. He said, okay, I'll do my best. And you're right. I am good at just solving problems. Just, you know, here's a solution. So I said, Bob, problem is in corporate America, we have two gears. In good times, you hire people. In bad times, you fire people. We haven't looked under a rock to see some other possibility that's a third or a fourth. We just haven't looked. And I said, there's a way that you can have employees be so valuable that laying them off costs more than it does to keep them. And I said, that's one part of the problem. He said, well, Ted, the reason there's no answer, there's no other possibility, is because no one's paid a group of people to sit in a room and told them you can't come out until you find some solution, some other possibility. He said, when I ran, like you said, in good times, I hired people. In bad times, I just randomly, you know, I told my direct reports, you have to lay off X percentage of people. And I never thought about how to do that. So I randomly laid people off. I said, well, there has to be a way. And that day we spent 90 minutes on the call, and it was an incomplete conversation. Next week we had another 2 hours, and the next. So we spent about 6 hours just talking about this with the intent was to not come up with an immediate answer. And so one of the things that we came out, I said, so Bob, you know, you lay off 20,000 people. And so GM lays off 20,000. Well, that's going to affect the home builders because that you just took 20,000 people who could buy a home. So now the home builders have to lay off people. And when they lay off people, the washer and dryer people have to lay off people. And when they lay off people, that they won't buy cars. So now you have to lay off more at GM. And so we go into this downward spiral and we have no way out of it. And so, you know, one of the things he said to me, he said, well, Ted, after I lay off 20,000, I have to fill at least 80% of those positions. And I said, oh my God, that is such a huge problem because think about positions that were filled. Now you have to fill them again. That's going to cost you. So maybe you save $10 million and now you're going to spend $30 million to fill 80% of the positions. So what do? You restructure debt, you buy back shares, you change accounting principles to hide the fact that you used a strategy that cost you more in the long run than the money you saved on the short run. From a quarterly basis, it may look good, but over the long term, it's not. And plus, you laid off or fired people who had very important, valuable information about clients that these new people, some of them may not work out. You have to train them. You know, you have to pay people to hire them. There's this
Right.
whole thing. So I said, um, so what we came up with in the end was training. And if you think about a Navy SEAL, they spend about $2 million. $2 million is invested in each Navy SEAL. that makes them valuable. You do not want to lose that Navy SEAL. And the longer they work for the government or the military, the more valuable they become. So they're worth more than $2 million. So if you invested in training, and not the training that tells you more product knowledge or more about the company, if you train people to be able to more effectively innovate, more effectively communicate, more effectively manage conflict, um, more effectively manage the uncertainty that comes with breakthrough initiatives, then you have people who are almost like Navy SEAL, because Navy SEALs are trained. You're out there on your own. Hey, buddy, breakdown, something goes wrong, chaos is there. And if all you're going to do is say, oh my God, get me out of this chaos, beam me up, Scotty, get me away from the chaos, you're not a valuable Navy SEAL. You've got to be able to navigate and innovate. So there's a lot of training that goes into that. So, but there's also a mindset that Navy SEALs have that don't really exist in the average person. So I'm not suggesting you train people by drowning them the way you do with Navy SEALs and have them carry logs and all that. What I'm asserting is that if you train people in such a way that they can navigate uncertainty, that you can put them in a situation that's very unfamiliar and uncomfortable, and they will innovate and come out with some solution so that when you say put 1,000 songs on a listening device, they don't spend 2 weeks trying to prove to you it's a bad idea. They spend 2 weeks looking at things that they've never thought in the past.
Yeah.
But that's a different kind of person than someone who just is steeped in the product knowledge of the industry. And this is part of the reason why most disruptive technology will come from companies outside your industry. They are not stuck with the way it is and all
I
the
love this.
rules and tools. So this conversation with Bob Weissman from D&B, this is where we concluded. And but there's another part to that. So in good times, you hire people. So one of the things that you want to be looking at is what's a tangential business to our organization right now. So if we sell paper to
Mm.
newspapers and the internet is eating away newspapers, physical newspaper sales, we still have equipment. So could we make toilet paper? Could we refit, because the population is growing on the planet, so they'll still need toilet paper, right? So could we make something that still utilizes the equipment we have? Perhaps we have to make an investment to refit it. We have to train some salespeople to sell a completely new product. But what it does is I can take some people from here, instead of firing them, create an entirely new division and drive sales. And I actually did this with a client. They
Mm-hmm.
were a food manufacturer, and their grandfather started the company in 1930. He had it as a retail bakery store. His son-in-law took over, and he started to push the sales of their. They had a brand that was well known, and he started to push it into the retail stores, and they grew. It was very successful. So here now you have two grandsons
Mm.
who are pushing their brand, and this company is the first company to make pita bread available commercially in the US. So at some point they were the first and only, and then the market was saturated. So
Yeah.
pita bread became a commodity.
Mainstream. Yeah.
It wasn't as profitable as it was when they started. So you have to think, well, what could make us obsolete, or what could make us just a commodity, right? So the breakthrough for them was to create a new division that made products for other people, no longer under their brand. So this became the joke, the light way to say it. It became the Willy Wonka division of the enterprise, where they could make things that they would have never made in the past. So it did two things. It allowed them to make products for other people, and they actually took on a client that turned out to be their largest client. It drove top line growth by $15 million and did a great job with EBITDA. Uh, and then they also started exploring in an innovative way, making their own products under their brand that looked nothing like what they had, traditionally done. So it served to, it gave revenue from doing business with other people and then innovative things, but it required new equipment, and they had the plant already that was just lying dormant. It was empty. And it filled the plant up and drove top line growth.
Beautiful.
So it was a great breakthrough for them.
And what you're sharing with me, and I appreciate the stories because it really supports also what I talk about is when we can unleash people's potential, they will achieve amazing things. When we ask people just get a particular result, that's all you're going to get. And so I tell the story a little bit about, you have to have a well-defined purpose. And when we measure performance of the organization, I don't measure it in terms of, particular KPIs, market share, EBITDA, et cetera. While I know stakeholders are saying, but where is, or show me the money. But if you could put a leading indicator on people's confidence, capability, and capacity and what holds them back, investing in people, training them the right way to be curious, to develop new skills, as you talk about, conflict resolution, navigating just difficult things. And you ask people, like, what if? What is possible? What do you think we could do versus I want a particular result? Because when you get a particular result, people stay within a box. When you
Right.
say, if we wanted to be number one at this, what would it take? Asking a completely different
Oh,
question
absolutely. Great question.
leads to those breakthroughs. And again, I appreciate, and again, if we're losing market share, well, then what are we good at the core? And how could we then leverage that over here to stand one step ahead versus always trying to play catch up? So I so get what
Exactly.
you're talking about.
Exactly. So the other thing where we leave money is there is so much unmined intellectual capital in
Mm-hmm.
your people.
Mm-hmm.
There are talent, skills, possibilities, capabilities. I really want to say that people have, and they so it leaves your employees underutilized. And so, uh, to do this, you really have to care about your people. Uh, but what I'm about to say may sound like you don't care, because when you are intentionally creating problems, this is not holding hands and singing kumbaya. I just dropped stress on you. I just threw you into uncertainty and chaos. And that's why I talk about training people to be able to more effectively navigate
Critical
themselves.
thinking. Yeah.
It's well, it's what derails us is beyond that. I'll tell you a story, but let me just back up. I'm going to share something
Mm-hmm.
personally. So, one of the ways that I found to be able to mine the intellectual capital or skills from people is to ask them to do things they do not know how to do. And but to do that, I have to know enough about them to know what I'm going to ask them isn't like some pipe dream. It's tangential. It's but it's going to be uncomfortable. And people will sometimes attempt to convince me you're making a mistake. You're overestimating me. I don't have this. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know how to do this. So I learned this in an unfortunate situation. So when I was 21, I lost both parents, and I'm the oldest of four. And my brother was 19, and my sisters were 12 and 16. So I had to take things off my plate so that I can do things that I didn't know how to do. I would ask them to do things, and I knew they would fail. So instead of me telling them how to do it, I let them go fail. So, this is your brother, and you're safe, and you can go fail, and you'll come back and tell me it didn't work. Instead of me telling them how to do it, I asked questions, and they, okay, and they try again, and they would fail, and they'd come back, and I would ask questions. So, I didn't tell them how to do it. What I did is created an environment where their problem solving skills completely transformed, because I'm asking questions that they normally wouldn't ask themselves. So now they're starting to see themselves in the world differently. And how that changed was, they would, in the beginning, go do it, fail, come back. I ask questions. So they would ask me, they would fail less and ask less questions. And at some point, I could just ask them to do something they didn't know how to do, and they would work it out and solve it. So when I found myself as an executive, that's exactly what I would do. When people would come to me and say, "Hey, Ted, I have a problem." Okay, what would you do if I wasn't here? And I go to the president. Well, you can't go to him anymore. So okay, I do this and this, and I ask them a question. I didn't think of that. And they'd go off. Maybe they come back, maybe they don't. But when they come back, uh, I would ask another question. And how that transformed was, Ted, I have a problem. I already know you're going to ask me these questions. I've already thought them through, and here's where I'm stuck. I would ask another question. Eventually, they didn't need me. They
He's
stopped
always
coming
asking
to
me
me.
questions.
Well, like I said with my sisters, they developed a new way of looking at solving problems.
Yeah.
So they could solve problems without me. Technically, I disrupted my own purpose in I made myself obsolete. I
But
disrupted myself.
but you left a legacy. You have family that hopefully productive and more equipped to face the challenges and uncertainty in the world. And again, that's what leaders should do is ask more questions versus direct.
Right.
I want to shine a light though on some of your work in the last few minutes of our conversation because again it's important work about your book. Here's why you can't find love, but it's personal, but it's also related to business and the impact on business. Share with us a little bit about that work because I want people to check out your book because I think it's so important to our times.
Right. So I wrote the book um, because I see a problem in corporate America, and in my research, there's a company called Life Innovation. Pulled out the CPAs and engineers, and they found that corporate America is losing $300 billion every year in workplace productivity. You may have already seen this about me. Do you know why they're losing 300 billion in workplace productivity?
No, but please play tell.
Divorce.
Okay.
So they find that when people are dealing with divorce, their productivity at work drops by 50 to 75%. So if you have a large corporation, that could be a lot of people, 53% divorce rate. So that's a lot of people not working. And it relates to the other thing I was saying. So when you have a larger percentage of people who are not as productive as they could be, you're not as profitable. So you start laying people off, and that causes stress on perhaps on couples that were not having problems, but they're now having problems because they were randomly laid off. So,
Mhm.
so I say that we could look at corporate social responsibility in a very different way now. Normally, people think about the
Mm,
environment and sustainability. So, if corporate America could train their people to effectively manage breakthrough initiatives, which is filled with uncertainty and chaos. And when people are more effective with resolving conflict and being more effective in how they communicate what they want to accomplish or being transparent about, what they're not able to do, people take those skills home. So when you now are having conflict with your spouse, you are more effective at managing the conflict at home with your
wow.
spouse, your children. And now there's no reason to divorce because that little tiny thing that happened 2 years ago that was really not a conflict that snowballed into
That's
10
so
other things. Um, Now you're getting a divorce. So I'm asserting one corporate social responsibility. I wrote the book, and the book takes the reader on a journey of transformation because it really looks at um, compatibility. How do we choose, and what's the real inventory of self, so that you know who's compatible with you. And then I use some business examples and some relationship examples. There are 5 women literally interviewing me. They're like, Ted, but you're a guy, and you guys think like that. And so it's almost like a workshop when you read the book. So it gives the reader a very holistic perspective on self and relationships and how you provide value to the other person.
So I really appreciate this because this is new to me. Again, coming up in corporate, you're supposed to get results at all costs. And they
Right.
kind of taught me late in life, but you got to work through people. Humans still rule the world.
Right.
And such language when, gosh, they're not acting the way I expected, or they didn't deliver on this deadline. When we seek to understand or help me to understand that this is my priority. I know you're busy. Help me to understand what you're dealing with. And when we get it down to the human level and just
Right.
ask a few simple things, where's the gap, or help me to understand, why do you see it differently, starting with questions, asking curiosity. I can absolutely tell you it. Mom, if you're listening, when I ask her, why is it that you do X, help me to understand, and when she answered me, it immediately lowered the temperature. Now I understand, either to approach with caution, not bring it up, or we can have more productive conversations, because humans are different. We're all human at the core, but based on our experiences, we may see and act differently. And I think that lesson translates from home, community, relationships into the workplace. If we can understand what's bothering you, you don't seem as happy, you don't seem as productive. Let me understand, what can we do together to get you through this? When we just show some caring, both in
Right.
the
Right.
workplace and home, it is a game changer if we just take the time and not treat people as a transaction.
Yeah, well said. And no, sorry. A lot of times we want to have a tough conversation with someone and we don't really know how. So
Right.
we either just throw it at them and they go into defense, they're like
Yeah.
Dracula's coming and uh, but there are ways to sit down with a person, whether at work or at home, and really set up the conversation. Like I really want to have a tough conversation. I don't know how to do that. I need permission. Like we're gonna do this together. And
Yeah.
so now the person knows I'm about to sit down and have an uncomfortable conversation. I'm prepared and it's usually not as bad as they think
I
it was
know we
going
build
to
these
be.
things up.
Right. But when you actually sit down and do have the conversation, but they're prepared for it. You didn't just throw it like you said, someone's doing one thing and you just, hey, look, get over here. I need to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, we have to treat people with kindness and caring. And that's really what I love about your work. Again, seeking the knowledge of CEOs, trying to help them have different mindsets, having better conversations, showing people we care, and equipping them for disruption. These are all such significant insights. But I know we could continue to talk, and this won't be the last of our conversations, but I would love to throw it back over to you for any last words and thoughts you want to share with our community.
Sure. Well, we've talked about this already. So if you are a company that has has an strategic growth plan, acquisition strategies, you may find that the companies you acquire are really just giving you lip service. So most acquisitions never realize the optimal, reason for the acquisitions. So my suggestion is to get someone from the outside help get that alignment. So someone like myself or Deb could really facilitate you in making and ensuring that you get the most out of the people you acquire because you're acquiring them for location, for talent, for technology. You want to be able to get it all. And as you said, we still have people and we have to deal with people. So how do you maximize your acquisitions that you make and ensuring that people are really online in alignment with you and and you get the most out of it and you're not pulling your hair out through frustration.
Ted, I have really, really enjoyed getting to know you and bringing your insights, your thoughts to our community. I know that so many people are going to really value it, and we'll put all of his contact information in the show notes. But I just want to say, Ted, thank you so much for dropping in. You've been an amazing guest, and I wish you and the people you work with tremendous success. And thank you.
Thank you for having me. It's been my pleasure. Great questions on your part. And I look forward to sharing this with my network. So thank you.